Hey plant friends, welcome back to my channel, Planty Princess. My name is Ashley. Today I am trying my first attempt to grow potatoes. I'm going to be growing them outdoors in these growing bags here. So I have two types of potatoes, and I have Yukon Golds and I have red Pontiac potatoes. Now, although this may work for some buying grocery store potatoes, it's not recommended. They do make or grow a certain type of potato for this purpose, and they are referred to as seed potatoes. So if you're going to try to grow potatoes, whether you're growing them outdoors in a garden bed, indoors, or outdoors in a growing bag, you definitely want to make sure you get that type of a potato, which is sold at nurseries, online nurseries. You can find them anywhere. So another thing that I want to mention before we get started is that what makes a potato grow is what's called the eye of the potato. Now you're going to cut your potatoes in slices, and if you cut, you can cut them either in halves, which is mostly what I did, I think, for the most part. I don't think I have any quarters, but you can cut them in halves, you can cut them in quarters, as long as the potato has an eye on it, which is, they can look like this, and this is more than one eye. They can also look like this, where they're kind of dipped in and not bulged out like the previous one that I showed you. So as long as they have an eye on the portion of the potato that you cut, they can be used. If you cut a potato and you do have a portion without an eye, you definitely want to discard that potato, because that potato will not grow. It will just mold in your soil, especially if you're growing in a bag like this. Could possibly contaminate the rest of the soil, which will, cause problems, grow mold, all that negative stuff that you definitely don't want in your garden. Secondly, the number of eyes on the potato does determine how many potatoes you will get. So the more eyes you have on your potato, like this one here, the more potatoes you will get, but they will tend to be smaller. So if you have a potato like this one here that only has 1 or 2 eyes, you will get less potatoes, but they will tend to be bigger than ones that grow more potatoes. Either way, you can plant them both. You can have some large, some small, more, less, doesn't matter. As long as you get potatoes out of this, I would definitely say it is a huge success. So what I'm going to be doing here is I am basically going to be, I already have my bag pre-filled about 4 inches with soil. I have 4 bags here, and I'm going to be planting the potatoes. You want to make sure your eyes are up, and before you plant them, you also want to make sure they callus over for 24 to 48 hours. I've already done that. I let them callus for 48 hours just to be sure that they were fully calloused over. That prevents them from molding, because potatoes do like to stay mostly damp, not like soggy wet, but they do like a relatively damp soil. And obviously if you plant a fresh potato in that soil, it will just get all mushy and really just rot away. So I would suggest letting them callus over for the full 48 hours before planting them in the ground or in your bags. Like I said, they go eyes up, and how we're going to be doing this is I'm going to plant them in my bags. I'm going to put maybe an inch and a half of soil over top of them, and then I'm just going to leave them be to grow. Once they start to grow a little bit, I'm going to then put another inch and a half on top of those leaves, and then let them grow. Same thing, another inch and a half on top of those leaves, and then let them go. And I'm going to do that basically until my whole bag is full to the top, and then I will just let the leaves grow. What that does is, instead of just filling the bag all the way to the top and letting the potatoes grow, that will make the potato keep reaching for the light, keep reaching to grow out of the soil, and therefore make more roots or more tubers or whatever it is that potatoes actually grow from. It will produce more of those, so you will get more potatoes than you would if you just planted in soil and put one thing over top of it and just let it grow, because the potato is just going to keep forming roots, because the potato itself is actually the root of the plant, kind of like a carrot is. The carrot that we eat is actually the root of the plant. So same thing with potatoes. The potatoes is the actual root, which is why keep planting on top of the leaves will make them grow more roots to get those leaves up on top of the soil. So without any further ado, now that I got all that out of the way, let's jump right in to getting these potatoes planted. We're going to make sure the eyes are up, and you want to make sure that you place them a little bit apart. You don't want them to be right next to each other. Now we do have a lot of tomatoes, so a lot of potatoes. So of course, tomato. So of course they're going to be somewhat together, but I would give them at least 1/2 inch apart just to give them some room to kind of breathe. Again, these are going to mostly be growing upwards rather than growing, you know, out and across. So they don't need too much space because the majority of the plant will be going up. I'm really excited to see what my potatoes will taste like, how well they grow, how big they'll grow, how little they'll grow, how many I will get. This is going to be a super exciting little experiment. So I'm also growing some strawberries, some blueberries, but this is the first year that I've tried to grow any fruits or vegetables on my own. I've done a lot of research prior to kind of getting started with all of this, but I am just so excited to see where this takes me in my gardening journey. So my mom is just labeling the bags here. That way we know, since we have 2 different types of potatoes. Also, we're gonna put the date that we planted these. That way we can kind of track the progress and know kind of what's going on. Another thing, generally your potatoes will take 70 to 90 days to mature. Although sometimes different varieties of potatoes can take up to 120 days. So that's just something to keep in mind. You will need a longer growing season if you're picking a variety of potato that does take a longer period of time. So make sure you, before you pick your variety, you see how long it will take for that variety to mature. That way you know when to plant your potato. When planting your potatoes in grounds, you generally plant after the 2 weeks after your last frost in spring. Now, when using growing bags like this, you can tend to plant them a little earlier because you can keep them inside. And obviously what determines that is the soil being warm. So you can control the temperature of your soil if you're planting them in a bag and keeping them indoors. Once you bring them outdoors, like we are going to keep these outdoors, while you're still in spring and there still can be some frost and stuff like that, you definitely want to make sure you keep track of that. And if there is going to be a frost, you want to make sure you either cover your potatoes or you bring them indoors until it's safe to bring them back out. That way the frost won't negatively affect your potatoes. So I have all the Yukon Gold potatoes planted. Now I'm just going to go ahead and get the red Pontiacs, and then we'll go ahead and top them off with about 1 inch of soil. So here we are. These are the red Pontiacs. These are the Yukon Golds. And they're all ready for their topping of soil. So now that we have all the potatoes planted, let's go ahead, oh that's heavy, and top them off with some soil. I'm just using your standard gardening soil, all-purpose mix. Also, you can mix in a slow-release fertilizer in with the soil. Like I mentioned in a lot of my previous videos, I use liquid dirt for all my planting. That includes this indoor and outdoor vegetable or fruit gardening that I'm going to be experimenting with. So I really don't have any other recommendations for fertilizers based on my experience, only just starting out. But I'm going to try this process with liquid dirt, which it is an all-purpose organic fertilizer, so it should be just fine. Last but not least, now, like I mentioned before, potatoes do like to stay on the moist side. They can be given about 8 hours of sunlight a day, and you just want to make sure that you're protecting your potatoes where you put them from any pests that like to eat them, like voles, moles, rats, groundhogs, stuff like that, mice. The nice thing about growing in bags is rather than in like a garden, you kind of avoid most of those pests for the most part. But that's not to say just because they're in bags that they can't be eaten by those types of things. So you just want to make sure that you're placing them somewhere that's going to be a little harder for any pests to get to them. So all of our potatoes are planted. They're topped off with their inch and a half of soil. I'm super excited to see how this goes, and I will definitely do some updates on as the potato grows and I top it off. I'll definitely let you guys know how that's growing. Make sure you check it out on my Instagram also, because that's where I'll probably be posting most of the updates on the fruits and vegetables that I'm attempting to grow this season. So thank you guys for watching and joining me in this journey. I hope I gave you guys some tips on how to do this, and if you have any tips for me, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested in the content I provide, and as always, every plant's a princess. Bye!